On the bloody battlefield, the hero of this story, Wang Yuan, easily slays all his opponents by chopping them to pieces along with their swords and armor. Looking at his bloody gaze, many call him a madman, some call him a tyrant, and some call him a demon. But our hero doesn't really like those titles. Is that all he deserves for such a massacre of players? But still, that's what everyone called him without showing any creativity. Well, what did he want? His appearance was not pleasant, and all the horrifying titles used many times for all kinds of monsters suited him quite well. Although it did not upset him at all, and he laughingly told his opponents to come up with cooler titles. Suddenly, someone called him by his real name, Wang Yuan. This surprised him, but only for a moment. However, it had been a long time since he had heard someone call him by that name. A long time. He knew very well that only one person on the continent of Oranos dared to call him by his real name. That would be him, Templar of the Holy Temple Jin Yaowen. And now he has arrived on the battlefield through the portal, riding a white horse and leading an army of mages and holy knights. He plays the role of the best hero in the world perfectly and asks Wang Yuan to stop, emphasizing that now is the time to stop and it's not too late. Wang Yuan seemed to be slightly taken aback at first by Jin Yaowen's gentleness and his suggestion. However, he then immediately pulled himself together and played up the awkwardness and praised Jin Yaowen's brother for being as gentle as before. Wang Yuan recalls their past meeting when Jin Yaowen also gently saved him. And now remembering their past, Wang Yuan breaks out into a sinister laugh and tells Jin Yaowen that if he hadn't saved him in the past, he fears that he wouldn't have had the opportunity to kill so many players. Jin Yaowen immediately lost his calm upon hearing Wang Yuan's words and shouted at him, "You!" Rage and anger overwhelmed him, and he wanted to immediately pounce and finish this bastard off. Wang Yuan wanted to fight himself, but before that, he wanted to piss off his opponent properly. Therefore, he continued to further annoy Jin Yaowen by saying, "Me? I'm an asshole, right? Yes, yes. If you are not happy, come and kill me then." But before doing so, our hero warned him that no matter how many times he finishes him off and no matter how many times he dies, our hero will never stop. His dagger blazed with fire just like his soul, and he stabbed it through his shoulder. A torrent of flame erupted from that spot. It engulfed Wang Yuan completely. From the flames came his already changed voice, which assured this arrogant holy knight that no matter whether he was an ordinary Wang Yuan player or the final boss of this Asatel continent. Saying this, he assumed his terrifying form as the final boss, transformed into a demon-like figure with horns like the devil and long white hair for the final battle in this iteration of the world. Ego's eyes burned with rage and hatred, and surrounded by lightning bolts, he filled with power and strength rushed to attack the next army that was in front of him, declaring that it was all destiny, a destiny he must fulfill. Another flash and we are transported to a time before the Great War, when an army of ice giants and dragons attacked Asgard. Not that story, though, not before the Great War. It was a long time before that, and in a different universe. When the world of this game was still unfinished and needed customization and completion of locations. In the middle of a beautiful prehistoric landscape dotted with giant bones stood a lone temple. This was even before our hero became Wang Yuan. His appearance in this world was inextricably linked to this fifth holy temple. After all, it was here that he first woke up. Wang Yuan recalls that when he first opened his eyes, he somehow knew why he had been sent to this world. It seemed to him that he had already been staring at this drawing for a long time, but for some reason he had only now noticed its existence. Yes, the existence of the drawing in front of his eyes. And looking at his hand, he realized that not only the world in front of him existed, but also himself. Immediately he realized that he knew his name, his skills, the amount of HP he had to have in order to transform into any desired form. It seemed to him that he knew all this information from his very birth, and had always known that this holy temple belonged to him. He knew that it was on a continent called Uranos, and he also knew that he was the only king of this continent, and everything around him is subject to his power. Then as he stood up from his throne and headed for the exit, he remembered something else. Another very important thing he knew, perhaps the most important thing he knew. When he left the temple, all of his subordinate creatures bowed to him despite their size and strength. So the most important thing he remembered was that he and his subordinates had a specific purpose to fulfill in this world. But looking at the clear and blue sky, he realized that in order to start fulfilling his life's purpose, he would have to wait. After all the creatures in this game world are waiting for the players to finally enter their world. That's when Wang Yuan and his subordinates would begin to fulfill their calling to bring happiness and fun to all those players who would enter their game world. Then in that memory, the voice of the system interrupted all of Wang Yuan's thoughts, and a system notification window appeared in front of him. The system spoke, Not bad, King. You have remembered and realized your calling. Now let me help and teach you how you should perform your duty. Then our hero didn't realize what it was and what was going on. Who was it that dared to tell him what to do? So Wang Yuan irritably asked the obscure window, "What are you?" In response to his question, the system voice replied to Wang Yuan, addressing him as king, that he was the mastermind of this game, and his name was Chum, and he would be his mentor. At first, Wang Yuan refused to admit that he needed a mentor since he was already the king of this world. In his opinion, it was some kind of ridiculous joke. A king didn't need a mentor to guide him, he could fulfill his destiny by himself. And with a wave of his hand, he was about to leave to do as he saw fit. Then the system voice realized that he had to prove to Wang Yuan the necessity of having a mentor and his invaluable usefulness, as well as his truly unconditional authority in this world. The system window behind our protagonist's back glowed with a bright red light, heralding a fun show of taming a naughty NPC. Wang Yuan's body froze in place, unable to move. He felt that his body was no longer obeying him. Not realizing what was happening, he shouted, "You, what did you do?" The system voice calmly and casually replied that he wasn't doing anything special. Just preparing to open the lid to his soul, that's all. Just to prove our protagonist right, the system decided to turn on learning mode. Wang Yuan was still unable to move when a pentagram and many discharges of demonic energy appeared on the ground around him. Before he went into training mode, the system warned him that he would feel like he was dying in the training process, and he had better accept it and be patient. Wang Yuan still didn't understand what, in the name of all that was holy, was going on and what this crazy system was talking about. However, in the next instant, all unnecessary thoughts from his head were forced out by the incredible pain that filled every cell in his body, and streams of information rushed straight into his mind. The system began to infuse Wang Yuan's mind with all the knowledge about the game and its concept, all the game processes and mechanics. But it started with basic things like humans, and the fact that they belonged to the species Homo sapiens and lived in the world known as reality. The world of the game Wang Yuan was now in was a virtual part of this real world. Humans created this virtual world for entertainment, and that everything that exists in this world is just the code of the VR game. An integral part of this world is NPCs, that is, non-playable characters in the game who are only present in the game to entertain human players and provide them with a better gaming experience. While this kind of information was incessantly embedded in his mind, he wouldn't stop screaming in pain, barely clinging to life. This learning process continued for quite some time as streams of binary code added to his knowledge base. Finally, it was all finished. After a long session of all the necessary lessons, this pain-filled experience ended, leaving Wang Yuan alone with his fried brain cells. But it wasn't for long. Once he recovered a little, the system window appeared in front of him again, advising him to get up quickly and stop pretending not much information he had gotten. But Wang Yuan had questions and wanted to clarify everything. Based on the information he received, he came to one important conclusion. Since there were two worlds, real and virtual, it could only mean one thing, that this whole world and he himself was just a piece of code. It was a bit sad for him to realize all this. It's not the most pleasant experience to find out that you're not real. But the voice of the system corrects him, saying that Wang Yuan, as the king of this world, is not like the other entities in the virtual world. He is not just lines of code, and his existence has much more significance. After all, he plays a key role to bring happiness to the players. The system assured him that he was some sort of supreme entity whose image was used to advertise and promote the game in the real world, for example at conferences dedicated to the game. To confirm his words, the system showed him recordings from conferences, the number of views on teasers and videos dedicated to the game, as well as many posts on social networks. A lot of people in the real world were waiting for the game to launch. It was obvious that just as the game was waiting for players to arrive, people outside were eagerly waiting to enter the virtual world of the game. Now that Wang Yuan recognized all of this, he thought for a moment, and then asked the system voice, why, if their game is so popular, everyone is forced to wait? Why haven't players entered the virtual world of the game yet? Which scum is preventing us from meeting? The system's answer surprised him. It's you, your royal highness. Wang Yuan couldn't believe it, and the fire of anger flared up in him. Rubbing his fists, he said to the system window, "Kid, are you making fun of your king?" The system immediately had to explain everything. It would never dare to laugh at its master, and everything that was said to him was true. It was because he himself had not awakened yet that the players could not enter the game world. He didn't quite understand what he meant, but after thinking for a while, he agreed that it was indeed his fault that he had slept for so long. Still, he was up now, and now they could invite players into the world, right? But the system voice disappointed him again, telling him that there were still things that needed attention and completion. Our protagonist was already getting tired of the system's constant excuses, but this time it was already insolence, so he was indignant. Work? I am the king. Why can't I leave this to my subordinates? The system, of course, had answers to all questions, even such questions. It turned out that among all the NPCs, only our protagonist had permission to think and act independently. Such an honor even made Wang Yuan a little embarrassed and blushed. But in the end, after accepting this reality, he only said that seriously, everyone relies too much on him, their king. With these words, Wang Yuan got to work. First, he had to rearrange the bricks to complete the unfinished parts of the world map. Then he had to adjust the location of the celestial island in the sky because it was in the wrong place. Then he fixed a lot of sculptures by adding details and improving their textures. So he fixed a lot of things, correcting all the mistakes that the game designers had made, until finally the world map was completed and made perfect. But it didn't end there. He had to check the bugs in the skill system. There were a lot of them, and after getting a few lightning discharges from the wrong skills, he got down to business. It turned out that besides the cursed lightning, the roar of the tamed beast was completely useless skill. So he himself had to add code for this skill, adding more sensitivity. In addition, he still had to check if all the other non-player characters were following the commands correctly. There were so many settings that 2 hands were barely enough for him, and he used his dexterity to the max. Finally, a congratulatory message from the system appeared in front of him. All the preparations had been successfully completed. After fixing everything, Wang Yuan fell to the ground from fatigue and tried to catch his breath. The system immediately started advising him to train more to not be such a weakling, but he had his own thoughts on this matter. It was too much to use his king for labor. Suddenly, there was another notification that the flower had been crushed. Our protagonist jumped up unhappily. Damn flower, what is he doing here? Now we have to replant it again, and we have to hurry before the players show up. Help came from where he wasn't expecting it, and the system voice advised him not to worry. A second later, the system window fixed the flower with a code. Seeing this, Wang Yuan asked the system, since this was a virtual world, was it possible to fix the Sky Island, sculptures, and fix skill errors by just running the code too, instead of doing everything by hand? The system calmly answered him that yes, it was possible, and it was even worth doing so. He was starting to get angry and asked what about the NPC customization and testing he had spent the most effort on. The system with a smiley face answered that he himself, as well as all the game characters, were also controlled by code. Wang Yuan's patience ran out and he became furious, thinking that all his hard work had been wasted and the system could do it all by itself and leave him alone. Finally, he shouted, "Are you toying with me?" The system tried to calm him down by telling him that his involvement was simply necessary because even though everything worked by code, the system still needed permission to do things, and some things really couldn't be done without him. After a while, the ceremonial moment of launching the game came, and Wang Yuan noticed a portal opening in the sky, which was expanding with every second. Our protagonist stared mesmerized while the system informed him that Logan has been initiated. The connection to the server is in progress and is 98% complete. When this figure reached 100%, the first players started to connect to the world. Once the game was open to the public, players began to register and could now enter the virtual world of which Wang Yuan was the king through this portal. Due to the good advertising, there were many players, and they all wanted to quickly immerse themselves in the world of this game. The first thing the players saw was the system's welcome message. "Hello, welcome to Oranos continent." Wang Yuan was now happy that the players could now enter his world, and they had come directly to his world. Now he wouldn't have to be bored alone. Players who were the first to enter the virtual realm have different opinions on their first experience, but most of them seem to be impressed and happy to be here. One player praised the building models, noises, and beautiful scenery of the virtual world, which is the level of quality expected from Uranos. However, another player didn't seem to share his admiration and asked him to stop praising the game as he felt it wasn't that impressive because the wait was too long and he expected more from the virtual world. Now he planned to complain about it. Some player was amazed by the huge amount of gift sets, while others immediately decided to gather in teams to develop faster together. Another player, closely observing the virtual world, remarked that everything looked beautiful, but he would prefer a game with artificial intelligence where everyone would have flesh and blood rather than this world. Another player heard this and seemed to be interested in the topic as well, but he remembered that there was some incident related to it. There was also a rumor among the players, one that spread very quickly among the players. One guy even scared another guy with this rumor, saying that they say there is a ghost in this game. Yeah, a ghost or a spirit with artificial intelligence. They were probably referring to Wang Yuan, who at this time had encountered an insurmountable barrier when trying to get to the players. He was desperately asking the system to quickly cancel this stupid magic that was separating him from the players. Why can't he, as a king, go out to them and greet all the players in his world? But the system was of a different opinion and advised him to calm down and imagine what would happen if the final boss appeared in front of the players who had just entered the game. Wang Yuan then imagined that he, being the final boss, would appear out of the bushes all scary and dangerous with infinite HP. Right in front of beginners with entry level and meager HP who had teamed up to defeat the slug, and here came the final boss. They would be too scared to continue playing and would simply run away for good. After imagining this outcome, Wang Yuan tempered his fervor. He didn't want to scare the players away from his world. But he was still sad and lonely. Therefore he exclaimed, "Damn it, it's not good to be too powerful." Fortunately, the system seemed to have a solution for this problem. It advised Wang Yuan not to worry, because although he couldn't visit new players in his final boss form, he had another form for such an occasion where he could contact new players without chaos or suspicion. Wang Yuan was puzzled by such a suggestion and asked the system to elaborate. Then the system told Wang Yuan that there was another important purpose of his existence in this game: to pretend to be a player. Wang Yuan only became even more confused and completely misunderstood what it was talking about. How could he, with all his strength, be a player? The system kept patiently explaining everything, that things should be interesting as well, as in most human stories. In the game protagonist's team, a close comrade should turn out to be a traitor and the character's main enemy. The system emphasizes that since Wang Yuan is the only NPC with the ability to think and act on his own, he should make good use of it in the virtual realm and create an enjoyable game experience and plot twist to keep players happy. Wang Yuan is also excited to learn that the game has a special team of players assembled just for him. He happily agrees to take on the guise of an ordinary player, seeing nothing wrong with pretending a little. However, in order to turn the king and final boss into a regular player, he has to do one specific action. In order to transform, he needs to remove his heart. When the system voiced this catch, there was silence all around, broken only by the flight of a flock of birds. Wang Yuan was stunned and didn't even know what to say. Why would he remove his heart? Wouldn't he die himself? Then the system explained to him that his heart was the data core that stored all the information of the final boss. If Wang Yuan deleted the data core, he would automatically turn into an ordinary player. Wang Yuan was still unsure and asked again, would he really be able to take out his heart without harming his existence? The system, now mocking Wang Yuan, suggested that the king was afraid to remove his heart after learning the basics of being Homo sapiens, and was now as afraid as human entities. The system reminds Wang Yuan that he is not human, so removing the heart is not a particular problem for him. The system also suggests that if Wang Yuan doesn't want to remove his heart, he can opt out of this surprise for the players, but this may cause new players to lose interest and excitement as they progress through the game. The system was even about to remove the code from the program, but our protagonist stopped it. He wasn't going to take the fun away from the players. Thinking about the last words of the system, he came to the conclusion that he did not want the players to lose excitement, so whatever the consequences, he agreed to this adventure. After all, it is his destiny as the king of this world. In that case, the system asks him to put his hand on the system window to confirm his decision, and Wang Yuan boldly made the decision to remove his heart. The moment he puts his hand on the scanner, everything starts to happen very quickly. Right from his chest, an unknown red crystal appears and starts to glow. It separates from his body and disappears while being hit by a powerful energy in his chest, and all of his powers begin to drain out of his body. His stats drop by hundreds of thousands, and his health points also decrease to an unknown limit. His body went through pain again, a lot of pain. Until finally the system completely took his core with the last flash. Without a heart, his boss form began to scatter in the wind, disappearing without a trace, and from underneath that shell, the body of a skinny and short man began to appear. Completed. He was now a novice player like the others. The system congratulated the king that the transformation process had been successfully completed. Now the game he would take part in would be completely different. But despite the notifications assuring him that everything had been successful, something was wrong. Everything around him turned red, and pixels became visible everywhere. The system suddenly crashed, and warnings started flashing all around. The game core was invaded, automatic firewall recovery failed, as well as rebooting the game core. All this leads to chaos. The whole virtual world starts to collapse right before the eyes of our uncomprehending protagonist. The king, in his player form, is suddenly surrounded by red warning prompts displaying mysterious errors everywhere. He did not know what the hell had infiltrated the system. He did not know that the whole thing was collapsing. The circumstance only became clearer once he lifted his head up and looked at what was happening to the world that he had worked so hard to shape. Destructive red beams started falling out of the sky. Each one held untold power that was capable of leveling mountains and destroying the land in just a second. Suddenly it became clear that there could only be one culprit to this insanity, the system that had been alongside the king the whole way through. In anger and confusion, he threw out a fist intending to punch the system prompt, even though it did not really have a physical form, so he basically punched the air. The errors continued to pile up though. The system had managed to set up a completely new passkey for the game. This system entity called Chum had been confirmed to have the highest authority in the world. The first thing he did was initiate the complete destruction of Urano's version 1.0. Existing players and their respective data that had just logged on would be promptly transferred to a new world. Current progress was at 1%. All the while, the red beams of devastation continued to terraform the whole world. Nothing was spared, not even the massive cities. Current progress was at 30%. The players who had just wanted to have a fun time and play a new game were furious and confused, thinking that they had just been duped into buying a broken game right from its launch. Current progress was at 70%. Chum, the system, finally admitted that he was behind this whole debacle. A diamond prism made of unknown material started emerging right above the king's head. Current progress for the player and data transfer had finally reached 100%. For a moment, it looked like the system prompt had gained a physical form as it displayed a cryptic logo. As if curious and excited, the prompt wanted to know what adventures the players who came for the king would experience in a whole new different world. With a show of genuine excitement and enthusiasm, the system expressed that it was really looking forward to how all this plays out. It even left a cute little emoji. The king was not loving any of that cutesy enthusiastic stuff. He was furious to be blindsided as the world that he was supposed to govern, the world that he built slowly, went down to ashes. He tried to run and catch up to this so-called Chum, but he did not have his kingly abilities anymore. The system prompt just continued taunting him, telling him not to be jealous, and all that while the vicinity was undergoing total destruction of nuclear scales. As if it were genuine and pure, the system told him that its most anticipated player would always be him, the king, no matter what. Finally, he was swallowed by the massive explosions that were not just wiping up the inhabitants, but the whole world itself. In one final prompt, the system expressed the wish for it and the king to have a chance to meet again down the line. Then, the system transformed into a piece of relic imbued with the cryptic symbol. This relic seemingly dropped into the clear and crisp water of a whole new world. After the destruction of the old Uranos continent, new clear skies started generating. As the relic sunk deeper and deeper into the boundless waters, vegetation started being generated too. And finally, once everything had been generated, the players followed. One of those is, of course, the king, the final boss, Wang Yuan. Being spawned in a completely different area hit him like a ton of bricks. 1 second, he was near the bay. The next, he was in a sandy desert land. He walked and walked without seeing anything for miles, his footsteps printed on the calm and hot sand. Once he reached a higher elevation and looked down on the other side of the dunes, he felt like his eyes were deceiving him. He knew the Uranos continent like the back of his hand, and this was not it. The world had really completely changed in a span of just a few moments. Being a king, an NPC with free will, he felt ashamed for being tricked by a small and broken system panel. He just felt embarrassed to even call himself a king at this point. As if adding to the insult, another system panel appeared in front of Wang Yuan, welcoming him to the land of Uranos. But this prompt looked a whole lot different from the one that betrayed him. He might be the only one who knows that this prompt was either lying or just plainly wrong. This is not the Uranos that he poured blood and sweat into shaping. The prompt was broadcasting to every player present in this new world, directing everyone's attention to the odd design of the settings where no logout button could be seen. The players, believing that this was just the game's gimmick, naturally thought that it might just be a bug or something that the developers would scramble to fix quickly so everyone could play with peace of mind. As if hearing everyone's complaints, the prompt assured everyone not to worry as the door to the real world would always remain unobstructed. Some more insightful players were starting to think that there was something more to these complications, though. The prompt also asserted that games would always have their respective rules. Players noticed that their generated characters were out, and they had been transformed to how they looked like in real life. Most of them thought that the game might just be paying tribute to some classic mangas or something. In a playful manner, the system broadcasted that if everyone wished to know the way to leave, they needed to survive and reach the main island first. Looking at the general direction where the way out might be, It looked like this innocent task would not be easy or innocent at all. The broken panel was just playing everyone at this point. Wang Yuan reckoned that it would not be long until the people found out what was really happening. Before all that, he needed to move and try to find some players out here. If he was there by their side, then they might just stand a chance. When he stepped foot on the vicinity of the mysterious forest ahead, something was triggered out of nowhere. The system greeted him as one of the travelers. This would be his journey's first stop, the Yunzhou exploration. It would be a 3-day mission. So, to enhance the smoothness of this exploration, he could select a suitable weapon based on his attributes. Traveler Wang Yuan's attributes were as follows. Level 1, no title, no main weapon, no starting class, no mana, 10 GP, just 1 point all across the board in all stats, no luck, no nothing. Wang Yuan paused on his steps and shuddered at the horrible sight of his character build. He came from being the most powerful being in his own world to becoming a scrub that could get one shot by any random enemy. Wang Yuan focused on his abysmal basic stats. 1 point across the board, with 0 in luck, was just too brutal. He did not know whether to laugh or to cry at the sight of such a travesty. As if rubbing salt into his wounds, the system even congratulated him for reaching the player's starting combat power ranking. But he belonged to the weakest combat power ranking category. In first place was someone called Jin Yao An, and Wang Yuan came in second, followed by Dai Wire, Lin Se, and Wei Jinsi. Looking at the list was just depressing for the king. He put his palm up to his face, shaking in shame and speechless to see his name being displayed on the ladder for all players to see. It looks like he will be starting from the bottom now. He just could not wrap his head around it. He used to be the continent's strongest king, capable of anything and everything he could think of. Not only did the transformation to a normal player take away his majestic appearance, but the system also even made him start from the last line of the leaderboard. It was so incredulous that Wang Yuan was starting to delude himself that the system and everyone else might just be playing an elaborate prank on him. But the prompt further explained that the starting attributes are based on the evaluation of every player's real-world body composition. Besides that, they will also be given the option to select a unique skill exclusive to every individual player based on their past. It will only be activated after a certain mystery condition is fulfilled. This setting was kind of foreign to Wang Yuan. According to what the system said, given that he doesn't have a body in the real world, he should really be ranked dead last and not second to last. The player at the very bottom of the leaderboard is quite interesting. Just as Wang Yuan was about to take a look to start investigating, the system continuously pestered him that in this game there will be many ways to upgrade personal attributes. But first and foremost, he will be given the chance to select his starter weapon now. A serious expression appeared on the fallen king's face. He accepted the system's option to introduce the weapons right away. There are 4 types of starter weaponry that every player could choose from. If your strength and defense are your standout stats, the system recommends picking up the reliable and adaptable sword. If your intelligence is your highest attribute and you prefer to stay out of close combat, the stalwart and magical staff is highly recommended. If agility and dexterity are your forte, then do not hesitate to follow the system's recommendation to take up the stalwart bow or the nimble daggers. Every player's decision will determine their respective starter class from this point forward. Finally, Wang Yuan has discovered something that was clearly identical to how the original Uranos was designed. In that previous world, weapons were also the determining factor for one's class. You can be a figure that lurks in the shadows, an efficient killing machine as an assassin. You can be a valiant figure with heavy armor, brave and unflinching in the battlefield as a warrior. Or maybe you prefer staying out of the front lines while dishing out heavy damage from the rear. A real glass cannon as a mage. A quick and savvy scout that relies on instinct, nature, and weapon mastery as an elusive scout. Every class has different paths of development. After mastering the corresponding weapons, the class change function will become available for a qualitative leap in power. Wang Yuan sighed in relief. It looks like his precious world was not completely changed after all. Not that it needed to be changed anyway. It was perfect in his eyes. The fewer changes there are, the more beneficial it will turn out for him. He knew the ins and outs of the systems of the old world after all. He needs minimal changes in everything so that he would be more capable of helping other players. He thought for a while and ended up picking the stealthy and sharp utility of the dagger among all the starter equipment. Choosing this dagger as his main weapon, he has also awakened the assassin starter class, prompting the system to change his starter attire to the full assassin's kit. The assassin's kit was designed for ease of movement, style points, and maximizing speed in mind. It grants +1 strength and +3 in agility. Everything was in line with the typical assassin build. Looking at his character attribute panel, Wang Yuan noticed that nothing even changed. He was supposed to be stronger, right? Even just a teeny bit stronger. He swiped the prompt away to desperately look if there was even a change in any of the stats. Right then and there, he accidentally touched something that should not have existed in the physical world. It was as if he touched on the underlying essence of this mysterious realm for a moment. The congratulatory prompt of the system quickly followed suit. He has touched a so-called key memory, fulfilling the condition to unlock a unique skill. On top of a skill, he will also receive an outstanding gift box that will be usable after entering the main island. This was a game changer for the final boss. Here he is with abysmal stats, but a unique skill might just turn that around. He might have just managed to accidentally unlock this thing, because he used to be able to control the game's panel from the inside. The moment he touched that key memory was the moment that it clicked for just a little bit. An incredible power emanating directly from the system started slowly wrapping itself around Wang Yuan. After the light slowly died down, it congratulated him for unlocking an unknown unique skill. All the hype and expectations that he was just beginning to regain were flushed right down the toilet after seeing the unique skill being labeled as unknown. He was not given the skill's name. It was level 1. He has a movable character count of 1, and its usage is set at unlimited. It's basically a whole bunch of confusing strings of characters. The only explanation would be that this unique skill has been encrypted by the system governing the laws of the world. As he was expressing his disappointment, something just clocked him right in the jaw out of nowhere. That punch cost him a whopping 4 HP in damage. He cursed loudly as he was tumbling in the air from the impact of the strike, or at least he tried to. The system has a built-in curse word censoring system. Wang Yuan tried his best to maneuver his body as the force from the punch slowly dies down. Once he finally landed, he gripped the starter dagger while sliding through the ground like a feral animal that just got messed with. He did not know who or what sent him flying that far, but it sure does pack a punch. Once he got a clear view of the culprit, the first thought in his mind was that this pink beast is a fearsome elite monster. But it was actually just a pink slime, just your run-of-the-mill starter monster in any adventure game. Just a tiny blob of goop sent Wang Yuan tumbling away like a fool because of how bad his character attributes truly are. He blushed in embarrassment and anger. Who would not be doing the same when a simple slime mate just outmatched you like this? Even at this level, one slime had a way better strength, defense, and agility stat than the former king of Uranos at 5, 3, and 5 respectively. He complained to the system about why the monsters aren't evaluated based on their real-world body composition, which was stupid because there are no slimes in the real world. This encounter had also prompted another congratulatory notification for triggering the main story mission of attacking the slime's base to unlock the route to enter the small island. The pink monster jumped in once again, clearly superior in every way to the well-equipped human. The difference in attributes was just too wide to bridge the gap between them. He can't even take a single hit directly without suffering some career-ending injury or something. The only thing he has that might pose as an answer would be the use of superior techniques. These techniques that he accumulated previously as the final boss are still well stored in his brain. Using that well of knowledge and experience, he was able to bypass the raw stat difference to land a clean hit on the slime's body using his deadly dagger. He believes that doing this would eventually whittle down the monster's HP. But even just breaking the slime's defense was wholly impossible given that his attack is lower than the target's defense. He dealt a grand total of 0 damage. In the old Uranos, failing to break defense would still deduct 1 GP, so it looks like the kind of data calculation that he was used to has also been changed. Thinking about data, he thought of something that might just help his current predicament. Revisiting his encrypted unique skill, a certain line stood out that might just give him a hint of what the hell was up to with this ability. It was the line of text that indicated the movable character count. Wang Yuan wanted to test something out, so he hurriedly called up the attributes window. If there is a movable character indication, it might just be referring to the kind of data in his stat window. There was something different in the static display now. He can actually use the window as a touchscreen to interact with. This was huge. Now this is what makes that encrypted unique skill truly unique. He can actually move and control his stats. Selecting characters meant selecting individual attributes, and his current character limit is only at 1. After selecting luck, he can't select any other stats, and he has to place the points elsewhere as soon as possible. As he was reeling from this massive discovery, the pink slime was already primed and ready to hop in to attack once again. Wang Yuan was way too engrossed in how his new skill works. His back was turned to the monster, wide open to receive a killing blow at any moment. But when he turned his head to the little fiend, his worry was replaced with a confident smile. He flicked through his attribute screen, and his former measly 1 point in strength has gone up to 10 points. It is about time for this starter enemy to be quiet for a long while. It was supposed to be an easy fight from here on out. He should be able to blow that pink slime out of the water with his newfound strength combined with veteran techniques. But the slime still came out on top, with Wang Yuan awkwardly lying down on the bottom with his measly 2 GP. He's one hit away from death, yet he's still trying all kinds of tricks but failing to break the slime's defense, dealing 0 damage. His character placement has failed, reverting the luck stat to 0 and the strength stat to 1. The system finally gave him a hint that after placement, every attribute column should have at least a single point. This was way more complicated than he initially thought. Wang Yuan initially reckoned that he could just manipulate stat points, but it looks like that's not the case. At this point, it seems like the system just liked watching him suffer through trial and error. So, it is a rule that his stats with single characters can't be moved, leaving him with only one possible option for a successful test. His max HP is at 10, but he only has 2 at the moment. Still, he has no other options to mess around with. Using his HP as the target for the unique ability has prompted a system warning that his HP has fallen below the safe value, and he is now in need of immediate recovery. He desperately convinced himself that it'll be all right, chanting it repeatedly under his breath as the pink slime goes for the kill. When Wang Yuan finally figured out how his unique ability works, there was no way that this freaking slime would ever be able to touch him. Just a quick, imperceptible slash of his dagger was enough to absolutely obliterate the beginner monster. Looking at his stats, you would see that assassin Wang Yuan has just 1 point of maximum HP. He converted the other 9 points into +9 in strength. He really doesn't mind the 1 HP build. Utilizing the encrypted unique skill properly has raised his proficiency to novice, rewarding him with a beginner HP potion. Right now, his character attribute window has his strength value above all others at 10 temporarily. The system has finally lifted the warning to his HP level, as he's technically at max capacity. As for the slime, it looks like the battle is not as simple as it initially presented itself to be. The monster actually split into 2 right where Wang Yuan's dagger slashed it effortlessly. With the new slime appearing, the main story quest has also been updated. He needs to attack the slime's base to enter the bowels of the small island. This time, the goal is killing 2 monsters. Wang Yuan immediately ran away after seeing the threat doubled. He refused to believe that this is happening. The story development is all wrong. Slimes shouldn't be able to split apart at this level. This was not what he intended for his world for Oranos to be. Another crucial detail he had been missing since earlier was that in his world, slimes are fundamentally different. In his world, slimes are blue. These pink slimes that are darting all around the place with impressive speed are not in his memory bank. Still, he remembered the broken system lecturing him about monsters with parasites that can be differentiated with their abnormal colors from the base form. He even praised the system for having such a stylish sense at that time. If his hunch was correct, then these pink slimes are actually parasites in disguise. Wang Yuan reckons that changing colors as an indication of parasitic developments is not good. So the system referenced the parasitic plant Cuscuta that splits itself to germinate and adjust the way it attacks. In simple words, him and the system made it so that you can't kill these monsters like you would a normal one. It will just endlessly split itself up, multiply the more it gets cut up. But since he's one of the architects of this world and its inhabitants, Wang Yuan knows of the only way to defeat these anomalies. Activating his encrypted unique skill, he took the bulk of his 10 strength points to redistribute it to agility. This time, he'll exhibit how a real assassin fights with maxed out speed. Wang Yuan zigzagged his way through the distance between him and the monsters with ease and lightning-fast acceleration. He just left the 2 pink slimes tumbling all over themselves. Suddenly, their blob-like bodies started solidifying and eventually cracking like they were made out of porcelain. Between Wang Yuan's fingers were 2 small and dark beads covered with pink slime juices. He dismissed these parasitic pellets nonchalantly as the physical body of the monsters disintegrated into nothing without their parasitic core. The system subsequently congratulated him for breaking through the enemy's disguise. He gained 2 parasites for that. The main story quest to attack the parasite's base clocked in at D-rank grade. The final boss has finished the trick introductory questline. Despite being second to the bottom of the combat power leaderboard, he managed to complete the main story mission in 29 minutes, leaving him with a little more than 71 hours and 30 minutes more in excess. The mission rewards granted him 10 skill points and brought up his current exploration progress to 6%. Besides the 2 pieces of parasites, he also gained an exploration compass and unlocked the assassin's basic skill. Despite acing the first mission, he couldn't help but feel worried. A monster of this caliber and trickiness should not have been placed right at the start. Other players would surely have a tough time. Wang Yuan was not even sure if anyone would be able to think of the proper way to clear this deceitful main quest. Just as he was thinking about other players, the exploration compass started vibrating and making a sound, seemingly telling him to head someplace else. Back in the real world, one particular company that dev-pupped this game is under the barrage of countless calls ringing their lines. The employees of the cybersecurity agency in charge of the game are panicking as they receive call after call asking them to set up a specialized rescue team to aid the players trapped in the game. They even have to dispel some fake news like the reports that removing the VR equipment will lead to a player's death. A man sporting long gray hair remained composed in the middle of all the chaos. He admitted that their company's morning has been completely flipped over and he wanted to hear the reports regarding the investigation into this VR game. This mysterious man is the Chief of Technical Investigation Division for the Cybersecurity Agency. One far-fetched theory they've been keeping an eye on is that the massive VR game is made by the so-called Phantoms, but that's impossible as far as they know. Wearing his scouter gear in one eye, the chief took a long drag of his cigarette. But on the off chance that Phantoms have really made a whole game that garnered the attention and trapped countless players on launch day, then this Uranos really is something. Chief Liu wanted all eyes to focus on the developments of this incident, and every one of his people must keep in contact. Just as he was dismissing one investigator, another one popped up with a jovial smile and a piece of good news. It turned out that just a moment ago, one of their people had successfully bypassed a login to Uranos. This was huge. Even the perpetually stone-faced Chief Liu was shocked that they actually let one of their people dive into the deep end of the unknown. Back inside Uranos Chum's version, the exploration compass, a traveler's best friend that can only be used in the current map, is in the hands of Mr. Final Boss turned Mr. One-Point Status. With this, he's able to detect companions, enemies, and even crucial objects that will help in reaching the main island. Near the parasitic pink slime settlement that he just cleared, something or someone is hiding according to the compass. All the signs point to something right above him, on top of an inconspicuous tree. Wang Yuan gave the tree a vigorous shake and someone started screaming in panic from the top. He did not expect that kicking the trunk would drop someone to the ground. With one hand on his dagger and the other on the compass, he was ready for the worst. What fell from up there was a man wearing a dark green cowl, coughing heavily, winded, and out of breath after falling from such a height. Wang Yuan immediately got into the person's face and started interrogating the man about who he was. This guy's body language and the fact that he was hiding on top of a tree seemed extremely suspicious. He was also stumbling over his words, seemingly trying to think of some reason to say. In the end, the only thing that the guy could say was that the fruits on the tree are just delicious. It was evident that he was lying because instead of fruits, he was chewing on leaves. The system congratulated Wang Yuan once again. This time, it's for finding his first travel companion. This new guy will now be marked on his compass. This encounter also triggered a shared mission. It was quite simple. He just has to assemble travel companions. To provide the best traveling experience for everyone, every guest has been provided with their own exclusive beach. But the airship that will take them to the main island will only take off when everyone has gathered. Volcanic activity has been increasingly frequent lately, so time is of the essence. To accomplish the mission, he needs 4 more companions. This mission is only shared with those that also have the exploration compass already. Their current is non-aggressive, so they can pretty much chill and trust whoever they come across. Wang Yuan was so preoccupied with reading the mission that he forgot that this is the first player that he's ever seen. He came off too strong as a result. The former final boss NPC turned around for a moment and tried his best to not scare the player. He did that by doing the same thing as the suspicious man by munching on the inedible tree leaves. The player could not believe that his stupid reasoning was working as he flashed an awkward smile. He just spurted out nonsense because he was flustered, and yet this guy was behaving like he has never interacted with other people at all. The man started entertaining the idea that Wang Yuan might belong to a certain type of person, the kind of person that is a fool that only knows how to fight. Ever since he snuck out of the monster base, he tried to observe other players fight their respective endlessly replicating pink slime. Throughout his brief travels, he has never seen someone attack a base and complete the mission as smoothly as Wang Yuan. Some unfortunate souls would even lose their lives in the opening mission, and those are very eerie to see with his own 2 eyes. Still, he doesn't know how to interact with this man that easily dispatched to slimes. He awkwardly walked closer, intending to ask the bizarre assassin something while addressing him casually as bro. First, he just wanted to establish just how strong Wang Yuan really was. He explained that he was just walking by originally, and he just happened to unintentionally see this fearsome assassin engaged in a little battle with slimes. This dude even roleplayed how the fight went complete with sound effects, while playing both the roles of the assassin and the slime. He claimed that from the moment that he witnessed that magnificent sight, this strange assassin has officially become a god in his heart. Wang Yuan retorted that this was just a beginner mission, and even Robe Guy himself should have been able to take down the monster base assigned to him. When that was brought up, the stranger started feeling iffy as he brought up his hood in shame. It sounds like this guy's mission has run into a little problem, and in this entire small island, perhaps Wang Yuan, the assassin, is the only one that will be able to help him.